What up, all you dwarves, elves, and wizards? Welcome back to another episode of Sweet Sweet Fantasy. I'm Matt, this is Ann, and what are we talking about today?
This week we're talking about HBO's Watchmen series.
Should we talk about the fact that my hair makes me look like I'm in a fantasy series?
Yeah, it's worth mentioning.
Yeah, I'd be on the Sci-Fi Network. I think I'd be like a low-level, like, evil wizard. That's the way I would cast myself, you know?
I cast you as like a wizened knight.
Yeah, a knight, like Sir Galahad.
The guy who like comes in with the gruff comment to like tell the young guy it's all gonna be okay.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
wow,
yeah.
You have a high opinion of me. Oh, my goodness.
It's an opinion.
All right, sweet. Well, yeah, I mean, I guess I'll start actually this week just to mix things up. I really liked the show. One thing that was weird. Ooh, look at this light shining on me. I am a knight. So yeah, I thought it was really intense. More so than, I don't know if it's because, maybe I think just it might be a personal thing just because I'm so kind of scared of like racial tension. Like I just want everyone to get along like so much. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And every single time it gets brought up, I just want to be like, no, it's okay. We don't have to like fight, you know? It's like, I don't know. Just because like in this country especially, like we're so, you know, I mean, slavery, it's like 5 minutes. It was like 5 minutes ago, like roughly speaking.
Yeah.
You know?
No, it's really surprising to have a show that's like based on a comic book or like the TV sequel to a comic book that is so heavy so fast. Because usually you expect this kind of fantastic setting to create a buffer between you and those issues. Like, you know, like you could view like the X-Men as a metaphor for racism, but it's like very metaphorical. So you're like, I'm going to take in these ideas and process them, and then eventually I'm going to see what they're really trying to say. But in this show, there's like no buffer at all.
Right off the bat.
Yeah.
That guy that's the white supremacist, right when he gets pulled over in the first episode, he's like listening to Future. He's like bopping along to it.
Yeah.
And then you find out that he's in the white supremacist group and everything. I was immediately just like, and then obviously the first scene where like there's a bunch of like KKK guys like shooting up all the black people in the Tulsa town. I was just like, oh no. I was like petrified. You know?
It was really intense.
Yeah.
And I think like, yeah, I didn't expect it to be so literal. Because like usually like in a comic book or a comic book movie or something, they say like you can take this material very seriously, but like don't take it literally.
Right.
But like those riots in Tulsa really happened, and like the parts of the show that were set in the real world were the ugliest, or like some of the ugliest parts of our world.
Right.
And like you're just clinging to these little like pieces of absurdity in neon costume as like a life jacket while you're fully immersed in the brutality of the concepts. Right,
yeah. What'd you think of the whole thing?
I thought it was amazing. I was in my head. I was in my own head a lot during the show. Mm-hmm. And that's not to say like it's a good thing or a bad thing, but there's so many really intense ideas and themes that they were dealing with that I think like I viewed the show and then I processed it a lot, and I'm not sure like how much of the narrative of the story I really understood or cared about so much.
Okay.
But I thought it was like just fearless. Like I can't believe HBO put this on the air.
Well, they're kind of known for that, though. That's like HBO shtick.
I think that's kind of amazing. They're also like, you can tell that the way the show was released, like a week at a time, it wasn't made in that like binge format a la Netflix. Mm-hmm. So I think like the storytelling was a little bit stronger.
Yeah, that's just another ideal that HBO goes for. They always release, they don't like binge it like that.
No, they're pretty awesome.
Oh, I love HBO. Yeah, thanks for the login, by the way. Anne gave me her login, and now like I just can't stop watching HBO shows.
It's my dad's.
Completely ruined my life. Yeah.
Thanks, Dad.
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to talk about that's not super heavy, but you know in Marvel Comics when they have that "Enough Said" underneath a picture?
No, not even.
Okay, so it's this thing. There'll be like a picture of Wolverine and like just his claws out, and then below it says "Nuff said," and they use that throughout like I don't know, decades and decades, and all different books use that, but it's kind of like, we're going to show you an image and you're going to immediately know that it means like something awesome is going to happen, that this person is like strong, heroic, and we don't have to explain anything. It's like just a picture and then it says enough said.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought like The Watchmen is a DC comic. I'll say that. I know that. It's not Marvel. But I did feel like they played off of that enough said idea a lot.
With imagery?
Yeah, but they totally... It wasn't traditionally what you would think to see. Like, the poster is like, it's a black woman and she just looks like cool as fuck. And you're like, that's strong, that's heroic. I want to know more about that story. Mm-hmm. And they just put that on the poster, like nothing else. There's like no other men in it. There's like, she's not doing anything. She's just looking at you. And I was like, enough said. Like, I'm on board. And like throughout the show, I kept having like kind of those moments where they just like introducing her the way they introduced Laurie's character, where she just like steps out of a car and like immediately starts like taking charge of the situation.
Oh, she was so great. The characters in general were so strong.
They really were.
I loved Laurie. I loved them all. They were all really cool. I loved the guy. I don't even know what his name was. A Looking Glass.
Oh yeah.
I loved that character so much.
Yeah.
And how how he evolves in terms of realizing that basically his whole identity has been a sham, because when he figures out, that Ozymandias or whatever like manufactured that squid, and he's like such a sharp guy. He's always like ahead of the curve, and for him to realize that he's been just like barking up this bullshit tree his whole life was like really, really cool.
Yeah, and you realized how momentous that realization must have been, because his whole thing is seeing the truth.
Yeah, exactly.
And he missed this one big one.
That was really cool. I thought that was one of my favorite things in the show.
He was kind of a cool like Rorschach follow-up character, because he had that like very damaged hero, but he still wants to save the world, even though he should really probably focus on himself. Saving himself. Yeah. But yeah, he was interesting, and the fact that they like gave him a backstory instead of just being, because he's kind of an archetypal character, the like just rolls with anything, very like, I don't know, smooth detective. But then they gave him this backstory, and it's like, oh my gosh, he's like so fucked up, he's struggling so much. Yeah,
definitely. I mean, the whole thing was really good. One thing I thought that really benefited the program was that, as a viewer, at least me, I did not read the comic book. Well, actually, to be more honest, I did read it when I was younger, and I completely forget about it. It was such a long time ago. But to not exactly know what type of story it is really helped out the plot, because when you look at it from a bird's eye view after having seen it, it is kind of a very typical plot. It's like, here we are in a small town. You find out there's some big conspiracy happening. The people at the top are running everything. That happens in every single story ever. But since you didn't really know that it was that type of story, like all those surprises came as like actual surprises, because you didn't know what, at least I couldn't put my finger on like what genre this is. Like, it's clearly not like Iron Man, and it's not Smallville, and it's like, I just don't know what it is. It's making all these like politically charged episodes, but then it was able to follow this kind of like almost predictable plot line. But since you didn't have any idea what you were watching, it all came as a surprise. Like, everything that's like prototypical surprised me. Like, okay, the guy running for governor is also the criminal underboss. There's a billionaire overseeing the town and pulling all the strings. That shit is so typical, but you just don't see it coming,
I was thinking about how would you give a recap of the series if somebody was like, oh, I haven't heard anything about it, what's The Watchmen? I would be like, I don't know what I would say. I would
honestly say this, now that I'm thinking about it, it's a super typical graphic novel. The TV series was.
Yeah.
Super typical. Like, that's like the plot of every graphic novel. I just laid it out for you, you know? It's a small town. There's a billionaire pulling the strings. The guy that's on top of the political power is actually the secret underboss that's eating babies or whatever he's doing.
He pulls off his mask like a Scooby-Doo villain.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's someone that we know.
Yeah.
No, the plot, it was very tight like that.
Yeah.
But I didn't feel while I was watching it like it was formulaic or predictable at
That's
all.
what I mean. Like, every single one of those really standard plot points, if you're into graphic novels, surprised you in this series, which was interesting.
Yeah, no, because I wasn't watching for that at all. I was just
And they
really
knew
like,
that. They knew that you were taken away by kind of like, they knew that they were surprising you at every turn, and they did a good job with that.
So the show is run by the guy who did Lost, and I know you really liked that show.
Really?
Yeah.
J.J. Abrams did this?
No, Damon Lindelof.
Oh,
He was like the co-creator of Lost.
interesting.
Yeah. Did you feel like it was similar? I didn't watch Lost.
I only didn't feel like it was similar. Well, Lost is tough because the ending just like fell apart so hard, and this one, the ending, I felt like it was a lot more planned than Lost.
It came together way more than I expected it to.
That's what I mean. Like, they had this a lot more planned out than they had Lost planned out. It was only similar to Lost in that there are some big mysteries and that you want to kind of get to the bottom of as you're watching it. But yeah, they were just, every turn was cool. Like, and it's that thing we always talk about that certain good stories have, like, where it mimics real life in a little bit. Like, you'll have these weird turns that you don't expect. Like what stuck out to me once, for example, is like when Lori sleeps with Pete or whatever. Like, you just didn't expect that. At least I didn't.
I kind of, when she's like picking out who she wants to go with and she picks like the youngest guy in the room.
Oh, you
I
were
was
already
like,
thinking it?
Yeah, I was like, Lori, you dog.
Well, there's that women's perspective for you.
Yeah.
Because I did not expect that. I was like, whoa.
No, I thought she was picking him because she wanted to go by herself. So she's like, let me pick some like young pushover that I can like mess around with on my trip.
Right. Yeah, I mean, what else do you want to talk about?
I mean, like she was so like, she was so
Lori
cool.
was the best.
And it was interesting to me because this is a TV show, and I was thinking, like, if I read the script, if I read what she was saying, in my mind, I would have a totally different picture of how it was being delivered and how people were reacting to her. And it almost, like, made me realize my own biases against, like, strong female characters. I'm using quotes. Because, like, she's a total boss. She's not trying to please anybody.
But Lori is an unrealistic character. That's one of those things that you find in a lot of shows. And it's great because we're trying to be entertained here, but nobody's that cool. Like,
no, I mean,
the
no.
writing of Lori was just like this mythic, like, it's hard to compare it to anything. Like, just, it almost compares to like some type of like hero that would be on like a 70s TV show. Like, he beats up all the bad guys and says like,
No, it's like,
a cool catchphrase and then walks away. You know what I mean? Because nobody's that intelligent with it, calm all the time.
There's
like, that was
dudes
Lori.
who are portrayed like that all the time. Like, it's like the Sin City, the Sin City detective where they've been around the block. Like, she's been through shit.
Oh,
like,
I don't mean for it to be a dude or women thing. Yeah, no, I mean, I'm just looking for any example of like, it could be a dude, but that I'm saying is like, it is prototypical in that it's this character that nobody would ever be that cool in real life. And yeah, she happens to be a woman, and maybe it's usually a dude. Who knows? But like,
it is. It's always a dude. And like, I was just like,
oh, I see what you mean. So maybe that was like the twist of her. Like, they were like, let's have it be a woman instead of a dude. This person that's always on top of it and kind of jaded and like always 3 steps ahead of everybody.
yeah.
I see what you mean.
But I also thought it was cool that like she had to earn her backstory. Like, she was one of the characters that was in the comic book.
Right.
Like, I think if it were a male character, like, he could just walk into the room and like you would be like, oh, he knows what he's doing because he's like an older professional in his career. And like with Lori, they gave her a backstory that made sense. You're like, I get why the governor would pick her before you know like about his reasonings, but like you're like, I get why he would pick her because she's been around the block with this stuff. Like, there's nothing about vigilantism that she doesn't know.
Right. But you don't think she's reminiscent of certain other like female detectives that we've seen, like Scully? You the girl in Silence of the Lambs, just these like smart people that are like, they happen to be female.
I was actually thinking about Clarice Starling, but the difference with Laurie is the way that people, and this was my original point, like reading her words, I would have imagined them being like humorless, and I would have imagined people kind of giving her the side eye and like talking behind her back, and there's no implication that is happening in the show. Mm-hmm. It's just like she gets shit because she's a boss coming in and taking over for a beloved boss. Mm-hmm. But no one in the show even implies that, like, how did a woman raise to this level of her job?
Oh, right, yeah.
And, like, I think that with every other, like, yeah, with Scully and Clarice Starling, there's still, like, they confront sexism. And the fantasy there is, like, they confront misogyny, they confront the patriarchy, and they win. And in this show, they're like, we're going to do a fantasy that, like, the patriarchy doesn't exist. Mm. And I think that's kind of interesting because it's almost like we've retconned history to the point where the patriarchy doesn't exist, but extreme racism still does.
Mm. Yeah, they definitely, I guess you're right. They didn't really treat the patriarchy as an issue at all. That's
no,
true.
Like, also with, like, with Sister Night, like, no one's, like, and I'm just used to seeing that. And that's, like, that's my own, that's, like, you mean. My own baggage
she was just
coming in.
Just a superhero, yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And, like, even, like, we talked a little bit about the Witcher TV show, but the first time, like, he sees Yennefer, it's like, I didn't expect for you to be a...
Right.
And it's like, I'm so sick of that scene. But you expect it, and the show didn't have it. And it was kind of like...
One thing it was definitely shooting for sure, was to not be outdated. That's for sure. That was definitely a conscious effort by everyone who I think took part in the creation of the Watchmen. They're like, let's make sure to not be outdated at all in any way.
Yeah, they threw in every formula, kind of.
They threw out every formula, and they also made sure to, like, represent, like, almost like everything. Like having... Let's see. Like having, like, the, gay sex that happens in between the, that dude and that dude. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
And without even mentioning it, like, it's no big deal. Like, they don't even go into, like, that guy's, like, sexuality at all. They're just like, oh, by the way, he also boned dudes. Anyway, you know what I mean? Like, they made very sure to, like, have all these things that maybe you wouldn't be able to, like, put into a piece when the original comic book came out. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that was kind of weird. I thought it was strange that, like, the one queer relationship had like a predatory man, like he was kind of predatory and exploitive.
But in the same way, they're like, in the same way that they didn't treat the patriarchy as if it existed, they didn't treat that as if it was, like, weird at all. And it was just like this in passing thing that was like, all right, whatever. Anyway, nobody even mentions it.
When he's like, they can't know your secret.
Yeah.
It wasn't that he was gay.
Right.
It was that he was black.
Right.
So that's kind of interesting because that makes me think back to comic books. And one of the things is, like, you can set it in this world where you cherry pick which demons you want to confront.
Right.
And this show did that.
Right. It was definitely mostly, at least the racism thing was mostly the thing that I thought it was hammering on.
Yeah, it was. And it was the critique of liberal politics as well was super unexpected and an interesting... I, need to process that a little bit more because I'm wondering...
How do you think it was a critique of liberal politics?
Well, the extreme... In the first scene, the extreme gun control means, the officer can't draw his weapon and then he gets shot.
Oh, that's cool. I like that. Yeah, I didn't even think of that.
And, they refer to tobacco as a controlled substance. Mm-hmm. So, it was implied to me that President Robert Redford was kind of funny. President Robert Redford has enacted all of these policies with the intention of keeping people safe, more rules to protect people, and it showed examples of them backfiring.
Interesting. There was definitely another thing about being on the tip of kind of everything going on right now that I thought they were trying to do is you could say that the Billionaire was kind of a critique of technology just getting completely out of hand,
or our future being placed in the hands of billionaires rather than an elected body. Like, I feel like Bill Gates or Jeff Bezos could change the world more than our government could.
Oh, right.
And I think, like, Mark Zuckerberg is he's testing the boundaries for that in some ways. So, yeah, that was interesting.
Yeah, what I meant to say is that it's just like current, you know? It's very like, oh, like here's these people that do kind of pull the strings and like kind of like do kind of overlord over our lives in a way when you think about it. Like, I mean, they got us down to a T, you know?
They can do whatever they want.
Well, it's just such a big part of our lives. Like, we all go on our phones, we all use Google. Like imagine some other company like having that sway over us. Like, imagine like, I don't even know, a grass fertilizer company that just has like everyone always wants to like stick their head into the fertilizer, and like that's our lives. Like, that's tech companies though. You know what I mean?
That's really funny. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was a pharmaceutical like CEO.
Well, she was
in
all
the
tech.
show.
Yeah,
All tech?
yeah. Yeah, she was, because she was like, I started off in like biotech and yeah, and then she bought up a million tech companies, and then she just owned the world.
She was a cool character.
She was very cool.
I couldn't get from like the first scene with her. I couldn't get a read on like, are they trying to imply she's bad? Or are they trying to imply she's good? And that's exactly how they wanted her to be. Because I felt like in the
you didn't know, yeah.
In the end, it was like I could come down on either side.
Oh,
of
really?
What she did. How did you feel? Did you feel like she was a supervillain?
It's not that she was a supervillain, but she just wanted like power so badly. I mean, she had a god complex. That's how I read it.
Yeah.
Because like, you know, she obviously wanted to become, you know, basically omnipotent by turning herself into Dr. Manhattan. Mm-hmm. But even so, like, to like raise your own mother in front of you just to like have her around, that's like god complex type stuff.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh, that was so weird, but cool.
Yeah,
it was like a very cool twist.
It was very sci-fi-y.
Yeah.
You know?
The one thing I thought was kind of interesting was how it was hard to tell what year the show was set in, and maybe it like flashed on the screen at the beginning and I just missed it, but like based on the super technology, but then kind of like based on it being, because in the end he says the Tulsa riots, which happened in 1921, were 100 years ago, so it was meant to be set in our present day,
right?
But in but like different technologies were very different. Like the car she drives is kind of an 80s style, like what a cop in an 80s show would drive.
That's actually a good point.
They don't have cell phones out. They like use pagers.
Right. No, that's actually a really, really cool point, actually, is the setting was incredible because it was modern day and with like slight twists. Like, but they weren't like all that far-fetched. Like the fact that like all cops wore masks because they don't want the bad guys knowing who they are. Like, that's not the farthest fetched thing ever. You know what I mean?
It's not. And it's kind of, it's right now, transparency in policing is a huge issue.
It's almost like it could be. Maybe that's what they're going for. Like, this could very well be our reality, you know? Not only that, but I believe that a lot of the technologies, not a lot of them, but I'm sure we as the public aren't privy to the technologies that currently exist in the world in terms of like the highest levels of like government and even like private corporations. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. They're cloning puppies and putting them in incinerators somewhere.
Something. They might be.
No, actually, you can get your dog cloned if you wanted to.
Can you?
Yeah, I read Barbra Streisand did. So anyone can.
Streisand.
Super villain.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there was...
Setting was really cool.
I think it's just in Oklahoma the police wear masks.
What do you mean? In the show?
I think in the show. I think the governor of Oklahoma allowed them to put masks on.
Oh,
because that's what I assumed, because Lori was like, we're going to Oklahoma where they wear like they wear stupid masks.
Oh.
So I was thinking like that's why, if like Robert Redford is the president and he's supposed to be an exaggeration of liberal values, then I think like putting police in masks and taking away transparency would be an extreme conservative value.
You think Robert Redford's supposed to be like is he like a liberal guy?
I don't know what he is in real life, but I thought in the show he was supposed to be like, I thought he was supposed to be like a liberal extremist serving 3 terms, and there's like gun control and taking everyone's cigarettes away and stuff.
Oh,
And then, but then it was funny to see like Senator Keene in his Southern accent, like talking about taking down white supremacy. And I thought that was just a twist of the show. And then I realized, oh, you're supposed to be suspicious of that. Because not to say everyone who speaks with a Southern accent is not
That's
going,
what you're saying.
No, not what I'm saying. Not going there. But in the show, I was like, oh, okay, this is another thing they're just gonna turn on its head. And then it was like, oh no, I should have been suspicious of him.
Do you think that they're going to have another season?
I do think so, and I mean, I don't think they need to. Like, I want to know what Angela does with her god powers.
You don't even know she has god powers.
Yeah, I guess you don't.
They leave it open.
I think she does.
I don't think they're going to do another season.
I almost hope they don't, because it was such a good season 1. It was
I
such
just
a
don't
good
see
season 1 of the
like
show.
I don't see like where you go from here. Like, you know.
It's almost like you would repeat. I think, like, you would have to sort of repeat Dr. Manhattan's thing, where she's going to try her best to use her powers for good, and then it's going to come around that no one person should have that much power, because power corrupts.
Now that you said that guy was involved with Lost, one parallel I can draw is that they throw a bunch of mysteries out there to keep you hooked. Example is the mystery of things coming down and taking cars away.
Oh yeah,
Like, that's very Lost.
the giant magnet.
You're just like, you're like, because you as the viewer, you think it's Dr. Manhattan. Like, that's what's implied.
Yeah.
You think Dr. Manhattan's up on Mars, like, kind of messing with, like, Oklahoma, you know? And that was really cool. And unlike Lost, where they had a million mysteries like that, but they never addressed the answers to any of them, you know? Obviously, we find out that it's the billionaire that's, like, doing whatever she's doing.
I bet he was super conscious of tying things up well.
Since Lost, yeah.
Because I didn't like, the show didn't need to end as neatly as it did.
Right.
But it did. Like, that last episode was like, oh my god, like, it was explosive. None of the mysteries in the show hung for so long, really, except like you find out that Will is Angela's great. Like, you see who he is within a couple episodes, and you could probably guess. I don't know. I didn't guess, but when they revealed it, I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense.
Right.
But it did seem like the mysteries weren't hanging for too long, and they all wrapped up. And I wonder if he was like, I can't have the message boards angry with me for another 10 years.
Yeah, he just keeps doing the same thing every TV show he gets.
Yeah, they're like, damn it, Lindelof, you did it again.
What'd you think of the character of Ozymandias? Like, did you think he was good? Did you think he was bad? Did you think he deserved to get hit by a head, like, hit with a wrench and getting taken in to stand trial? Like,
Yes.
yeah.
I think he's
You think he's, like, evil?
But he doesn't realize that he's evil. He's not trying to be evil. He just thinks that he's smarter than everyone. And that was another example of, like, nobody should have absolute power, because nobody is perfect. And like, he thought he wanted to be like the master, and he wanted to be like the god playing with people. He wasn't like, I'm doing this because...
Well, he admits to that too. It takes one to know one at the end.
Yeah. No, I thought he was really bad, and I really enjoyed when Looking Glass like bombed him on the head right at the end of the show.
It was really satisfying.
And then
they did a good job of that.
He and Laurie drag him to Owl's ship.
That
was really cool.
Yeah.
But the scenes with him, I was reading, like, some people didn't like those and thought they were kind of like dilatory. But I loved them. I thought
the ones with him in his own little prison when he's like doing all his weird stuff.
I thought it was like a nice break, and I see why they did that.
Yeah, I also think he's just a really big character in the universe, so you have to like have him involved in like some capacity. Because if you're doing because I do remember him being a big character in like the Watchmen comic book.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like you can't have like whatever a Tom and Jerry show without Tom in it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're gonna have to show what Tom's up to, even if it's like we're on Jerry now. You know.
And he was kind of sidelined for the whole show. Like, I wasn't afraid of him or really wondering what he was doing. I was just kind of like, oh, I wonder what he's up to in his weird little English manner.
Yeah.
I never got the sense that I thought Lady
You're right
True...
that they did tie everything together. That is cool, because they had all these mysteries and they did all come together. At least they followed a literal story arc, which I didn't all the way expect when I was halfway through the show.
Yeah.
I was like, this is all gonna fade to nonsense. Like that's what I was thinking.
And I would have, you know, I like kind of would have been okay with that because I feel like that's the trend in storytelling. It's like, especially these kind of like, do you watch the show Legion? I feel like things based on comic books, it's like the creators think like, okay, we can just like throw shit on the wall, and if we like it, it sticks. If not, we'd ignore it. And because they're like, well, people like comic books, they like using their imaginations, right? Or like, but I thought this was a really satisfying way of like, people who like comic books pay attention to everything, and they're gonna be like dissecting this episode the next day. So like each episode was just packed with like messaging through the music, through the colors that they used. I mean, like everything was intentional, and I wasn't even paying attention to stuff until it became important. Like why are all of Veet's servants?
Oh, I've got a
those
question.
Two people.
I've got a question. What about that guy that was dressed all in silver, slicked oil into himself, and slicked under the thing?
Oh my God!
Do they ever address that?
I don't think so.
They don't. See, that's a mystery. See, that's Lost style. That is Lost style.
I thought it was Pete, just because of like the shape of his body.
Oh.
And because it was kind of like stupid.
That was like so weird.
Yeah, and
that's what I mean.
He's obsessed with costumed heroes.
Maybe it was Pete.
So I thought it was Pete.
Maybe that'll be revealed season 2. That's a decent prediction. But yeah,
that was so silly and so awesome.
It was so silly and awesome.
That's what this show is it sounds super serious, and it is super serious, but it's not entertaining. It's not like,
oh, it was so entertaining.
There are scenes that are really hard to watch. I mean, you're inside somebody's hood as they're being lynched. Like there's no holds barred.
That's what I mean, intense.
When it comes to confronting very serious topics. Oh. But there's also there's high humor. There's a lot of big characters. Oh, Don Johnson in the pilot, and then they kill him right off.
That was cool.
And you think oh, he's in the show. It's gonna be a big deal. It's almost like when Ned Stark when they just killed Ned Stark out of nowhere.
Classic HBO move.
God, they're like, people like this. We're gonna kill Don Johnson in this one.
Yeah.
I think that was Don Johnson, right?
And then
I don't know,
last thing before
guy.
we sign off here that I thought was cool about it was a scene that I don't think I've ever really seen before, where when Lori was kind of revealing to the wife of Don Johnson that she was kind of onto her, and the wife immediately just confesses.
Oh yeah,
She's like, yeah, so that's why you wanted to, and the wife says something like, yeah, kill him. Yeah, well, we were supposed to kill them all, but that was cool.
That was cool.
Because you don't really see that usually, They usually draw that out more. It was just it's just different.
Or she could have just or she could have played well, I don't know what my husband was doing.
Right.
And Larry would have had to be like, I think she knows something, but I have to leave. But instead she's
that would have been standard.
Yeah, and then it just just the women in this show, it's women of different ages and different races talking to each other about super important things. It was I don't know, I think it's groundbreaking. And I hope it was almost distracting for me because I'm something big is happening. So maybe in a few years an HBO can just keep doing it and then it'll just be normal.
Maybe. That'd be cool. All right, but yeah, that is our time. We are going to do Night Watch next. Back to novels. It's called Night Watch. It is a Russian novel by
Sergei Lukyanenko. It's a series. I'm so excited about this because I've lent this book out to friends probably 6 or 7 times. I've paid a lot of money for this book over the years because it's one of my favorites, and you finally read it. So
yes.
now I have someone to talk about it with.
I'm excited about it. So yeah, we'll see you next time.
All right. Bye.
Bye-bye.